Hello, Seta. How are you?
Hi, Maze. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good. Thank you for your time and to talk to me about your open textbook methodology and the approach. But I know now you've got 3 open textbooks published. So I would like to start first to ask you if you can tell us a little bit about yourself and what do you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Iseta and I teach at the University of Southern Queensland. I'm in the School of Education and my area of expertise is in intercultural and multicultural education. And I've got a really specific focus on equity for diverse young learners. I also look at family engagement. So one of the courses I teach is about intercultural communication in the early years. And this course is really focused on teaching young learners who speak English as an additional language or dialect. And more importantly, it's focused on reconciliation. So looking at the process where all early years educators can engage with reconciliation and also teach it for our young learners. My work in open education, it's really kind of come about by accident because I've wanted to do what I'm doing in my field better. I've wanted to teach those concepts to my students better. And so, you know, in looking for those meaningful and authentic ways of assessment, I sort of stumbled across open education.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. So tell us about your open textbook. Maybe I will start with Gems and Nuggets, Multicultural Education for Young Children.
Yeah, sure. So that book, Gems and Nuggets and Hidden Treasures, they're both about intercultural, multicultural education for young learners, with half of each of those books devoted to reconciliation. So the books were written by my students, undergraduate students who were pre-service teachers in early years education, and they were edited by myself and 2 colleagues that I work with. So that's Dr. Karen Hawkins and Jacqueline McDonald. The books, each chapter is written by a student author, and they respond to issues that early years educators wanted resources for or wanted to know more about. So in the section Reconciliation, you'll find in there chapters about how to source local First Nations knowledge and stories, how to make connections to community elders, how to create opportunities for staff to learn more about reconciliation and some other topics. And then in that section about multicultural or intercultural education, you'll find resources about simple phrases in other languages that you can use in your early learning context, how to create communities practice for learning more about inter/multicultural education, any guidelines that educators can share to help parents with culturally diverse backgrounds prepare school lunches, and that's a very important thing in this field. And there's a bunch of other topics, but basically the chapters are all responding to the real life concerns of in-service early years educators. And the other book, which is sort of not in that series, but is in the same sort of process, there's a 3rd book that we put out called Hearts and Minds, and that was produced with postgraduate guidance counselling students. And we had 48 student authors for that book. So that book's a lot bigger than Gems and Nuggets and Hearts and Minds. My colleague, Dr. Yasheen Pillay, she helped me run that one. Sorry, the other way around. I helped her run that one because she did the assignment with her students. And then after the course finished, they decided to publish their book. It's the case studies cover, there's autism, ADHD, depression, anxiety, and I think there's about 7 or 8 different conditions that the students wrote about, and they write these really punchy case studies that educators can just grab, read and go. So it's a really practical resource that we've produced in Hearts and Minds.
Fantastic. It's really great to see that this enthusiasm is transmitting through your network and your colleagues. Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. So can I ask what you touched on this? You said that at the beginning that you're trying to find better ways of teaching the topics that you teach. So do you have any other motives behind going open instead of going through the traditional publishing methods?
Because I had sort of stumbled across open, I didn't at that time have any other motives except, you know, wanting to explore open assessment, because I'd gone to this information session at the university and there were these grants there about open educational practice, and I knew nothing about open education, but I did want a grant. So, you know, I went along to this presentation. The open education support team at my university, they're really amazing. It's led by Mr. Adrian Stagg, and he really convinced me that open assessment might be this option for running authentic and meaningful assessment, which is what I wanted. And so the publication part of that, the open publication, kind of came about in a roundabout way. We never really intended to publish our students' work, but once I'd sat down at that presentation and looked at all these options, I thought, oh yeah, I might give it a go. To be honest, I'd never really considered traditional publishing for my students' work, because my experience with textbook or book publishing is really quite limited. I've published articles and I've published, you know, in conference proceedings and so on, but I have never published a book. So this has been a really nice way for me to dip my toes into publishing and to sort of see the background process behind pulling together a larger piece of work. And now that I have gone through the process, I'd really highly recommend it to any academic that feels like, you know, maybe their textbook doesn't cover all the topics that their students need, or maybe someone who teaches into a course like mine, where a lot of the people coming into the course have actually got on the ground practical knowledge. So the earliest educators that I work with, a lot of them are trying to upskill. So they have, you know, they've been in the field 10, 20s, you know, or maybe even just 3, 5 years, whatever. But they're coming in with experience. So they're not these blank slates that I'm teaching. They're people who have got a lot of experience to share with others. So if you're in that sort of situation where you've got professionals coming in who are upskilling, you might want to consider an open publication so that they can share their knowledge more broadly. And this is what we found with Yashin's book, Hearts and Minds. Because all the teachers, the people she was teaching were teachers, and they were trying to upskill to become guidance counsellors. These people know schools, and so the work that they were writing was by teachers for teachers, and so there's a lot of value in that. So if you're in that position, you might want to consider open publishing rather than traditional publishing, because one of the benefits is it's a lot faster. You've still got all the rigorous, you know, not barriers, the sort of standards in place where you've got to have your copyright all checked, and you know, making sure you're not plagiarizing anything. You know, we do very thorough. Well, not we, our copyright officer, Ms. Nikki Anderson, she did a very thorough job of going through line by line and checking our students' work and checking our work, and, you know, just making sure that things fit together, looked right, and so on. So it still goes through what I think is the same rigorous process that a traditional book publishing would go through, but, you know, it's more widely disseminated, I would say. So yeah, I would highly recommend open publishing compared to traditional publishing.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. It's great to hear that the team and the efforts behind sharing it. But I think the core values that also evident in your approach is great to share. Thank you for that, etc. Now, you talked about engaging your students in creating the books. So I really would like to hear about that particular approach. How did that happen? Was it like something, an open call for students to come and create chapters, or how did you go about this?
Okay, so when the open assessment grant came out, realizing that I knew nothing about open assessment, I started doing a bit of research into, you know, what does it look like? Like, what does it look like in practice? And so one of the things I came across, which really appealed to me, because remember, I was trying to improve the way I was teaching, was this idea of renewable assignments. And that comes from Wiley and Hilton in their article in 2018. And so they talk about how the artifacts that students create for university, they're often not shared past, you know, the people who are marking it or their teachers. So there's an opportunity in renewable assignments for students to share their work more widely through open publishing. And so the process is that students will create their artifacts in their assignment in your course, and then they will openly publish it. in my course, I had my students do it, and only the students that had passed the course overall were invited after the course had finished to openly publish. And they're just invited. There's no obligation for all students to participate. I do it after the course grades are released, because it takes off that that idea that maybe I'm, coercing them into publishing, or else their grade might go lower. It takes away all of that. And it's really just open to the students whether they want to participate or not. And if they do choose to participate, then we help them with refining their work, and then we take that up the next levels for checking copyright and all of that. So that whole renewable assignment process has worked well over the 3 courses we've run it. Actually, we've run it in 4. Our 4th book hasn't yet come out yet, but it's run well in having students sort of create their artifacts, knowing that there's a possibility they could publish it later, but not being made to publish it. So this is one way in which renewable assignments differs from other types of open assessments, which make students sort of do stuff on the go, on the fly, and that's counting towards their grade, whether they like it or not. So for us, we take away all of that. We got support from the Open Educational Practice team with this whole process. So we had regular meetings with the Open Educational team to bounce off ideas, because the process is new in our university. It's not new in the world, but it was new in our university. So just having people to talk to about each step you're taking, that helps with running the process. Now, for our specific textbooks, what we did was, to inform what the content was, we went to in-service professionals and we said to them, look, what is it you think? What is it you need? And so we did 9 focus group interviews with 74 in-service educators, and this was in 2019. So we did one in November and then one in July the next year. We went to them and we sat down with them and said, we're thinking of putting these books together, but can you tell us what is it that would be most valuable to you as a professional, and that you would like to see in these books? And so that they gave us ideas. We pulled out the main ideas from those focus group interviews, presented these to students, and that became their assignment, respond to these ideas, create resources for them. And then after we've openly published these books, we've taken that back to those in-service educators, and we've said, here's what we've produced, what our students have produced in response to what you said you needed. What do you think? And we got feedback from them. So it's gone around full circle, so that we're not just producing something that goes out into the, a black hole and nobody talks about it again. We've actually taken this back right full circle to the people who helped us initiate the activity to start with.
Fantastic. Really great to expand the network to also include professionals outside. Yeah. All right, thank you for sharing that. I think the last thing I would like to ask you, and how the open textbooks are being used in teaching. Is it part of your subjects or other subjects at University of Southern Queensland?
Yeah, so it's part of my subject. It's not part of other subjects because the content that's in it is so, it's created by my students, for reconciliation and intercultural communication, and that's not a topic that's taught across different disciplines in the same way. So we use the textbook in my course, and my students use it for different aspects of the course. When we're talking about certain things that might come up that educators find challenging, then we'll use a chapter from these books. It also serves as an inspiration for students. So I still run the same assignment in my course. I don't openly publish each cohort's work anymore, but I still run the same assignment. So when students are looking for examples of what these assignments might look like, they can just go to the open publications that previous cohorts have made. Fantastic.
Thank you, Sarah. That's fantastic to hear, and I think a lot of people will appreciate to hear your story and the resources and the ideas and the network that you worked with, and the value of the community to help with advancing this work. Thank you so much.
No, thanks, Mace. And I mean, just finally, the level of student engagement, you know, it can't be underestimated. I haven't formally, you know, looked into what dimensions of engagement it's really promoted, but we've gotten emails from students about just how proud they were of their work, just how engaged they were with the activity, and how grateful they were to be able to give back to their future professions. So the assignment has really hit the nail on the head for me in terms of it being meaningful and authentic. So yeah, it's been a great project.
Fantastic. That's amazing to hear.
Thanks, Mace.
Thank you.